Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be talking about how to turn your headphones into the perfect listening environment, or at least as close as we can get to that. Now, whether you are just starting out, getting into audio, getting into mixing, or you may be exploring, like, oh, I'm going to try mixing on headphones and whatnot, this is a great place to start. And especially if you are first starting out and first getting into audio, I really hope that this is the first video that you see because honestly, this video is going to save you tons of time, also some money, and a lot of frustration actually. And I'm going to give you all the information that you're going to need to know to get this actually going. And I'm also going to be talking about some of the tools that you need in order to do this as well, in order to have a good listening environment and get yourself going and being able to create good mixes. Um, Now, you may be wondering, well, okay, why should I listen to this guy? Well, my name is Kyan Smith. Let me just introduce myself really quickly. As I said, my name is Kyan Smith. I've been doing audio for goodness, a bit more than 30 years. Started when I was 15 and I'm 47 now. So, um, and pretty much came up the old school way, just talking to engineers and just having a passion for audio. Now, over my time, I've done studio work. I've had a couple of studios. I did a bunch of live sound. I did some live sound, not a whole lot, but I did some live sound for a period of time. But also, for about 11 of the years that I've been doing audio, I've been teaching. And I was teaching at a post-secondary school in Vancouver, Canada called Columbia Academy. It's not around anymore. But at the time, it was the longest running uh, audio video production broadcasting school in Western Canada. It may even have been the longest running school in Canada. And we produced a lot of good students in all of those fields. I know the school has some Grammy, Juno, uh, Emmy, Oscar award winners um, in the roster of students that have graduated from there. And a few of them I've taught myself. So very proud to be part of that legacy. And like I said, I really have a passion for teaching. I really love teaching, which is the whole reason why I'm doing this. And I love helping people start out in audio and get started right. I was a nerd when I did it, and the knowledge that I gained, I love to pass on. Actually, one of the engineers who really helped me out in the beginning actually said something, and it really stuck with me. He said, "You know what? I'll gladly teach you everything you know, everything I know. Um, the only requirement is that you do the work that I tell you, and you do the stuff that I tell you. You use it, and you pass it on." And that's what I'm doing. I'm passing it on to the next generation of engineers, and I hope to help you make something great. So, anyway, without further ado, let's get into this and let's get into showing you some of the stuff here. Now, before we get into actually the tools and whatnot, it is important to understand uh, what's going on in audio. Because my philosophy also of teaching is first you have to understand it, and when you understand it, you can manipulate it. And when you can manipulate, once you know how to manipulate it and what you can do with it, then you can be very creative and you can basically create with it. And then you can create your own mixing style, uh, create your own style and become really unique in how you work and how you um, and what your sound is. So that's ultimately what I'm trying to help you achieve. But the first thing to understand is this part actually is your listening environment, because that is the first point of stuff that you need to know. So your listening environment plays a very, very important role in your mixes. Um, and that is how you are actually hearing the sound and the effect that the room is having on you, because uh, your room can actually lie to you. And so it's also part of the reason why I'm kind of pushing you using headphones over using speakers, is for that exact reason, is the room that you're actually in. Now, if you're starting out, chances are the budget's pretty small, right? You don't have tens of thousands of dollars to throw at this, right? Or thousands of dollars to throw at this. But you can potentially afford a set of headphones. Now, back in the day, it was pretty much taboo to do any kind of uh, work on headphones. And that's primarily because headphones kind of omit something from the human auditory system, from your hearing system. And that's something called the HRTF. which is the head-related transfer function. And so what the head-related transfer function, really quickly, what that is that yes, you hear with your ears, but pretty much the distance between your ears and pretty much your head goes into how you perceive sound. So let's take, for example, if we look at the difference between listening with and without headphones. So, for example, in your everyday life, without headphones, you hear a source on one side. Say it's here on the right side or on my right side here. There's a sound coming in from my right side. I hear it, of course, in my right ear, but that sound is also going to bounce around the room and it's going to arrive at my left ear as well. Now, there's a distance between my left and my right ear, so there's going to be a delay in time based on that distance because the sound has to travel further. And so basically the sound is transferring from my right to my left side. And no matter where that sound or wherever that sound source is, there's going to be a difference. And that's part of your directional cues. But in this sense, we're talking about the head-related transfer function. So a lot of stuff in audio, it's actually in the name as to what exactly it is. So in that case, it is the head-related transfer as the sound transfers from one side to the other. Head-related transfer function, right? So that's what it is. Now, when you listen with headphones or when you hear something in headphones and something is panned all the way to the right again here, if there's a sound source that's coming from the right or panned to the right in headphones, well, it's only going to be reproduced in the right speaker. And nothing is going to be reproduced in the left speaker. And that's completely unnatural. And so you don't hear things naturally, pretty much, when you're mixing in headphones, because with the head-related transfer function, there's a whole bunch of things that actually happen. I mean, there's time delays, there's phase differences. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens that you don't really think about. And that is basically gone. The HRTF is gone when you purely listen to headphones. Now, we now have technology where we can recreate that. So because we can recreate that, that feeling in a room, we can actually create better mixes. Oh, by the way, because the head-related transfer function happens when you listen through speakers, but it doesn't happen when you listen through headphones. And so that was the main reason why. That was primarily the main reason why you shouldn't mix on headphones. Even if you do get used to mixing on headphones, I find personally, if I was to do a mix on headphones, I've tried it in the past, just on headphones, without any software. They didn't translate well to speakers or to any other system. It translated horribly. However, now, I mean, I do a lot of my mixing actually on headphones. I pretty much do all of my mixing on headphones. And in using the technology, my mixes do translate. Now the other part of why I would also recommend using headphones over using speakers, especially when you're starting out, is because setting up a room properly actually takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time. When you, a lot of people, for example, they interchange soundproofing with acoustic treatment. And whenever I hear people say that, it's pretty much like a red flag to me saying like, okay, you don't know how to set up your room properly, because if you don't know what the difference is between those two, then, it's going to be a difficult road for you. So what you're trying to achieve in your room, first off, you need to have a dedicated room for sound, which a lot of people don't have, myself included. I mean, I'm sitting in my office here. That's where I do all my mixing. Excuse me. So first you need a dedicated room. Then you need to basically set up that room. You need to acoustically treat that room. And acoustically treating the room is so that the reflections, you want to have what's called a flat frequency response in your room or in your listening position. And what that means is that that's an area where all frequencies are represented equally, or they have an equal RT60, which is a reverb time or a reverb decay time from its source to negative 60 dB. It needs to be even across all frequencies. And that's why you have different foam densities. That's why, you have bass traps and clouds, and you would put absorbers and diffusers on your wall. Anyway, uh, you would need to set all of that stuff up so that you get a flat frequency response in the listening position. And that takes a while to actually figure out and calibrate and get used to the room and all this kind of stuff. It takes quite a while. But if you don't know that, you could easily be sitting in a room that is completely lying to you and you have no idea. You would be wondering like, okay, why does my mix sound great in this room, but then as soon as I take it out somewhere, it sucks? Well, it's because your room is lying to you. And um, with headphones, you can pretty much avoid all of that because there's software out there that pretty much puts you into I wouldn't say the perfect room, but it comes pretty close. It comes very, very close. And it gives you a much better listening environment than if you would have just set up speakers in your room and go from there. Much better. Um, and because you would have a decent listening environment right from the start, when you go and when you start mixing and you find that what you're hearing outside of your mixing environment, if there's something wrong with it, then chances are that whatever you hear that's wrong with it, well, that is what is actually wrong with it. It's not because of, everything sounds fine in the room and then it doesn't translate well. At least that's one thing out of the equation that is gone because you have a flat frequency response in your listening environment. Now, at the same time, it takes some time to actually get used to your listening environment, whether you're using a room or whether you're using headphones. It takes a little bit of time to actually get used to it. So after I show you this, after I show you everything that we got going on here, I would highly recommend that you basically just listen to a lot of music on your headphones with the software here so that you get used to what it sounds like and how it should sound. In this listening environment, because like I said, it does actually take some time, but at least you're not spending time getting used to listening to the wrong thing. So now that's the main reason why I would suggest headphones over speakers, especially when you're starting out. And also at the same time, you know what? It's cheaper. So the other thing that you may be wondering too when it comes to this stuff is, a big question is, what headphones should I use? And well, to me, that answer is relatively simple, and it's not as people kind of want to say, okay, you got to use this headphone or these headphones or these headphones, like open back, close back. Some headphones are going to cost you an arm and a leg, and some headphones aren't, right? Here's the deal. When it comes to headphones, also when it comes to speakers, for that matter too, I would say, first of all, especially when you're starting out here, your budget. Your budget is important. You need to buy what you can afford, right? And not so much stress over like, oh, I got these headphones and they're like $500 or whatever. It's like, you know what? If that's not within your budget, don't worry about it. You know what? The main thing is you find some headphones that sound good to you. Open back headphones tend to sound more natural. Closed back headphones tend to sound a bit more bassy, but honestly, when it comes down to it, I mean, there's a whole lot more you can get into with headphones. But honestly, if you want to kind of put a blanket thing over it, buy the ones that sound good to you. And there's one other thing as well. I'm going to show you that later that you would need to consider as well. But that comes when I start showing you the plugins and start showing you the equipment or what we're using to create this listening environment. So yeah. So as far as choosing headphones, choose the ones that sound good within your budget. Now, let's get into the tools that we're going to use. So, and also briefly, I guess I'm also kind of assuming that you may or may not know anything about signal, that you may know something about signal flow. If you don't, very briefly, everything that I'm putting on here, as you can see, is over here. It's in the master fader. The master fader or the master section. This is the last point before the sound actually goes out to your headphones or to your listening environment. And so this is where I'm placing everything. All of your individual channels, which are some of them is what you see here. All of your individual channels basically go and they sum up into the master or the mains. And so it goes from the individual channels. Later on when I start talking about in another lesson, I'll talk about signal flow. but it usually goes from the individual channels to the subgroups or buses, and then from there into the mains. So, but because this is the last point, then this is where I'm putting everything. So the first thing, or I should say also, everything runs from top to bottom. That's how everything kind of flows. So the first plugin, I'm just going to go full screen here. Actually, I'll give you a quick rundown of what I have. The first, the first plugin here is Adapter. And also, by the way, I'm not sponsored by anything. This is just the stuff that I use and I find useful. And I figure you will find useful as well. So the first one here is Adapter. And it is a reference plugin. This is because referencing, you would need to reference between professionally mixed music and your own music. So the first, I'm going to go into the plugins as well, just a quick little overview. The first one is a reference plugin. The next one is a mono summer, a mono summing plugin. I do a lot of my mixing in mono, and there's a lot of good from doing that. It kind of helps you. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. My VU meter, when I start off with my mixes, I use a VU meter. Then I have my restream. That's so that you can hear whatever I'm playing here. And then we get into NX, which is the room emulation software. I have a couple of different versions of that. And then lastly, I have SonarWorks, which is my frequency flattening software for my headphones. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to show you individually what these plugins, give you a little bit more of a rundown of what these plugins are and how you can kind of use them a bit. So if I pull up the first one here, my adapter here, or the adapter. So what this plugin does, like I said, it allows you to use your reference tracks. And it also has a bunch of analysis tools as well. So first off, you can A/B. So I can go from my main, from my mix, and then I can listen to a reference track. And I have a reference track here. This is one of the songs that I've mixed. Goodness, this is quite a while ago. So I can show you kind of what this plugin does. But the nice thing about this plugin is that it allows you to load up like 16 different reference tracks. So you have tons of songs that you can actually listen to from just within this plugin. And that is very convenient because back in the day, I used to have to find my tracks, load them up onto a separate, like onto its own track, and then I have to like mute and all this kind of stuff. It was kind of annoying. This is very convenient to do. And I have this placed here because, actually, no, I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, you can do you can load up 16 different tracks. And it has some analysis tools. Now, before I get into all of these lovely analysis tools, what I would say is that they're nice to have, but it's easy to fall into analysis paralysis, which means you get so hung up on analyzing the sound that you forget to listen to the sound. So it has some great features. Honestly, I don't use them all. I kind of just glance at them, but I'll show you the ones that I find mostly useful. So you have playback, which just shows you the track, really. And then you have the spectrum analyzer. So I'll just play a little bit here. So the spectrum analyzer just shows you what your frequencies are doing. And then it's easy for you to go between, your track that you're mixing, and even go in between the other tracks here to see how it compares, how your mix compares to, to the reference. Oops. So there we go. And then also there is, so that's the spectrum analyzer, kind of shows you your frequencies. Then there's correlation. Correlation shows you the phase relationship of the individual frequencies, whether, if they're in and out of phase and whatnot. And then you have stereo. I don't really use this one so much. There's other techniques that I use to try and make sure that my stuff is in phase or not completely out of phase. And being out of phase to a little bit of degree is not as bad as you may think, as you may or may not think or want. Then you have the stereo image. The stereo image width, again, shows you the frequencies, here, and it shows you the width of how they are represented. Dynamics shows you how dynamic your music is. So right here is showing that it's dynamic. It can also show that it's heavily compressed or slammed. And then you have your loudness meters here that shows you, you know, different LUFS and different measurements of how loud your sound is. Now, like I said, you can easily get into analysis paralysis and start really looking at all of these numbers. Um, the main ones that I use is pretty much just spectrum analyzer and stereo imager sometimes. But like I said, there's ways of going about your mixing to make sure that stuff kind of falls into the right place when you're working with this stuff. So anyway, great plugin, awesome to use. I find it very useful. Now the reason why that one is first is because of the next one here. Like I said, this is my mono. This does like a little mono. I can switch between stereo and mono. This is a free plugin. And again, I find this one incredibly useful because I pretty much do the majority of my mixing in mono. And the reason for that is, really briefly, is that if you take everything and you collapse it onto each other and everything sounds good when it's in mono, it's going to sound good and clear when you spread it out into stereo as well. So it's just a way of kind of making sure that you have the clarity between everything that all the instruments and whatnot in your mix. So I primarily do that. A lot of times towards the end of my mix, I am able to listen to just my left side, just my right side, and the sum of left and right together. That's primarily what I use here. I mean, I'll get into the pan laws and all that kind of stuff. That's a later subject, but this is a useful plugin. And I have my adapter before this one because I also would like to monitor and see what my reference tracks sound like in mono as well, of course. So I can use that as a reference. What does theirs sound like in mono? What does mine sound like in mono? And next we have the VU meter. So the VU meter I pretty much only use when I'm starting out and I'm doing my volume balancing. And I only use it a little bit, actually. I don't use it throughout the whole mix. So it's really only something that I use shortly. How to go about using it, what I do with it. Again, that'll be something that I discuss later on. Next one that I have, Restream, that was to let you can hear what I just played. Now we get into the good stuff here. So now we get into this one is the Wave NX. Again, not sponsored at all. But I do have quite a few Waves NXs here. That's why I say that. The Waves NX plugin, this basically is a plugin that is a room emulator, and it reintroduces the HRTF into the mix or into your headphone mix. And by having that, you're able to recreate, you'll be able to have mixes that translate better. Anyway, there's other plugins out there. There's also D-Sonic Real Phones. There's Dare VR. They make some as well. There's quite a few, and I would say you should try them. If you read reviews and whatnot on message boards or forums, you'll find people that love NX. You'll find people that hate it. And that goes for any plugin, pretty much. So really, if you like it, then great. I can explain. I like this one. There's also a few other ones that I also like. But it comes down to which one sounds good to you and which one you like. I'll explain this one and the features that I like about it. I like this one primarily because it really mimics the studio setup, to be honest. What it has is, first and foremost, is the head modeling, because this is what kind of sets the HRTF or creates the proper head-related transfer function for you. Because when you first load up the plugin or when you first use it, you have to pretty much measure your head, put in your head measurements, and these are mine. And you put those in, and that gives you the proper image. Gives you the proper speaker image, and it kind of places the speakers right in front of you. There is this feature here, which is the head tracker. I own the head tracker. I used to use it. I don't use it anymore. What the head tracker does is it actually, it really gives you a very clear image of having the speakers like right there, so that when you turn your head, the speakers basically, they remain, sonically, they remain in place. It's quite trippy. Now, at the same time, there have been times where I would turn my head and then all of a sudden, like, it will stick, it'll freeze there. But a lot of times it would track it. It would track it quite well. I just found that I always want to be in the sweet spot, and that's pretty much where I wanted to stay, and just use that for my monitoring. The other thing here is the speaker width. Now, speaker width, you can see here my speaker width is 70 degrees. And funny enough, that is pretty much anywhere between 60 and 70 degrees is the standard kind of speaker placement. However, when you get into using this plugin, if I do anything, you can't really hear it because the Restream is before this, and it wouldn't really matter to you unless you have the exact same size head as me. But when you're positioning your speakers, what you're listening for, whether you're doing it with speakers or whether you're doing it with the software, is that you're listening for the image. Let's give you an example here. I'll take this piece of paper. Doesn't have my address on it. Bay ad. Anyway, so when you're doing your speakers, if you were to bring your speakers close together like this, so that everything is pretty much mono, the speakers are right together. You're doing this, like you're taking your two sides and you're bringing it out, and you can see your center kind of goes out more, comes out more in front. So you want to get it to a point to where basically your sides and your center creates an even kind of image across your stereo spectrum. Now, because it's a piece of paper, if I had an elastic and I was to stretch this even more, the center will start getting smaller, right? So if you go too wide, then you start noticing that your center gets thin, kind of weird sounding. That is an indication that it's too wide. So you pretty much want to find a spot that's where it sounds good for you. And I kind of like that feature in this, is because you can set your speaker width to where it sounds best. And a little trick that I do, that I also did for setting it up, is I actually went back into adapter here. I would go into adapter, and I have a bunch of tracks that I can play because I'm sure this will get taken down if I do. But you have your professionally recorded tracks, and then you can actually listen to those tracks, and as you're listening through the software, and you're adjusting your speaker width, find that adjustment to where it sounds good, to where you have that nice, even, balanced stereo image where your center is sitting there nicely on par with your sides. Basically, it's not too loud, it's not too quiet. And that will tell you that that's your good speaker position. Now, the other thing here, room ambience. This one is a really, really cool feature, because when you are sitting in a room, when you're sitting in a room, what you see kind of needs to match what you hear. And so what I mean by that is, for example, me sitting in my office here. It's drywalled walls. They have a certain reflectivity. If I clap and stomp or snap or whatever, I will hear a certain characteristic for this particular room. And so what I'm pretty much looking to do here is I'm looking to set my room ambience so that it matches what I'm seeing. And this is just another step, or another added realism step for this particular plugin, because it's basically, in that sense, it's kind of turning the room that I'm actually in right now into the perfect listening environment, because the reflections of what I'm hearing kind of match with what I'm seeing, but the frequency balance, later on you'll see, the frequency balance of what I'm hearing is actually as if this room was perfectly tuned. So that is pretty much this plugin. Those are the features I really like about this plugin. Like I said, there's other ones, and by all means, try them out. Download the demos. Get used to them. I've gotten used to this one. I've had this one for a long time, and all of these plugins is almost like having different rooms. You basically get used to the room that you mix in, and then once you know that room, that's when you start turning out mixes that are exactly what you want. And I've gotten used to this plugin. I've gotten used to this room. That's why I haven't, as other plugins came out, I haven't really switched, because I'm used to this. Now, this is the one that I mainly mix in, that I do all my mixing in. Now, there are other ones that I have here, and I'll show you those ones real quick. So I have three other ones that are within the NX family, and these are studio emulations. I used to mix through this one. This is the studio of famous engineer Chris Lord. He's done, well, tons of Grammy-winning albums. Great engineer. But I used to mix in this room because this room actually sounds a little bit like the room that I did a lot of my mixing in. Well, that song that I played was mixed in a room pretty much like this. Um, and it sounds very similar to that. And so I mixed in this, but the problem was is that it didn't match with what I was seeing. So that's why I switched over to the other one. And it also, every room has their own characteristics, and you get used to those characteristics. So this room isn't perfect, but it has its own characteristic. You got to get used to it. And I just felt that I should get used to the flat response. And then I would use these rooms as my references. Now, when it comes to referencing your mix, I mean, there's referencing your mix against professionally recorded music, which is what we did with Adapter. But then there's also referencing your mix. There's also referencing your mix in other environments. And so this is basically another environment. So I would take my mix and I would play it in this room. Now, if you listen to a lot of videos, a lot of people would say, oh, you gotta play your mix in a whole bunch of different environments and make sure it sounds good. Okay, well, great. What does that mean? Well, it's not just a matter of making it sound good. What you're actually listening for in those different environments is you're listening for the sound to have the same characteristics across the various environments, and in this case, the various speakers in that environment. So here we have the near fields, which is the NS10s here. Then you have the mains, which are the big guys, and then you have the boom box, which is somewhere off in the back corner over here. You can actually turn around. I don't see it anywhere, but it should be here somewhere. But anyway, yeah. When you actually listen to it with the NX, it actually sounds like it's behind you. It's pretty cool. And you want the characteristics of your mix to be pretty much the same across all speakers. Now, if you happen to buy this plugin, Green Day, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, big hit of theirs, was mixed in this room. And when you listen to this in this room, you pretty much get a good idea of what I mean. Because as you flip through the speakers, it sounds almost identical. This is the NS10s with subs, which is a very common way to mix. Has a little bit of low end. The mains has a different kind of low end. The boombox, is a boombox. It's a smaller speaker. It's more akin to your wireless Bluetooth speaker or something like that. But it sounds the same. The characteristics sound the same throughout all three of these. And that's pretty much what you're trying to do when you do a good mix. Because when you do that, when that happens with your mix, then you know you have a good mix. So I listen to it in that environment. I also listen to it in this environment, which is Abbey Road Studio 3. Same thing, same deal. I listen to it on the three speakers, and my aim is to get it to sound even like same characteristics to all three speakers. And the same thing for the last one here, which is the Nashville Ocean Way. So I don't mix in these rooms. I just use them as my reference to make sure that my mix is on track and that my mix is good, that everything sounds good. And lastly is this guy, SonarWorks. So SonarWorks is a headphone flattening software. Oh, by the way, the one other thing, before I get into this one, the one thing that I wanted to mention about choosing your headphones, let me go back to, this guy here. Oh, it's the same for all three of these. Anyway, the thing that I wanted to mention is that your headphones do not recreate a perfect flat frequency response. They vary widely. That's the other thing that's kind of not so great about, or that was part of the taboo with mixing on headphones. It's because their frequency response just was would be hugely, would vary hugely. Like for example, my headphones, they have a 6 dB boost at around 200 hertz, which is quite a bit, So they're not flat. And the problem with that is that when I'm mixing, I may think, oh my gosh, my 200 hertz is just way too loud, and I would overcompensate, and so I would turn 200 hertz way down. And then when I go and listen to it on a system that doesn't have that boost, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, my 200 hertz is like really lacking, right? So that's part of the problem that you have when your headphones or your room is lying to you. So you would want to flatten them out. Now, this software and pretty much also a lot of the other ones, pretty much all of the other ones, they have some form of headphone flattening or frequency flattening calibration in it. And so this plugin has that for this list of headphones. So if you say, for example, you've downloaded the demo of different softwares, different room environment softwares, and you found one that you like, and that one has a list of headphones, I would choose the headphone that fits your budget and that you like and sounds good from that list, right? And there you go. Then you found your headphones, right? So this is a list that they have. Now, in my case, I have these guys. These are the KRK 6400s, and they are not in this list. So I have to do something else. And that brings me to the plugin that I was just describing, which is this guy. The Sonar works. This one is a reference 4. It's an older model now. It's called ID4, I believe. Same thing though. And this one has my headphones in it, and it creates it's able to flatten it. So let me just show you what's going on here. So if I look at my headphones, this is the frequency response that my headphones are producing. So you can see here's that boost of 200, 6 dB boost of 200, and then there's a dip at like 1800 probably, 3 dB dip in this area, and then there's a couple of spikes here. Well, when you mix, like I would be mixing, thinking that is flat, thinking that that's the natural response, when it's actually not. So I'll be overcompensating by pulling down too much of this or boosting too much of that and so forth, right? And that's the reason why why my mix would not turn out good, why my mix wouldn't translate well, because my headphones would be lying to me. So this one is the correlation. So this is the compensation that the software is doing. So it's basically counteracting that frequency response. And in the end, what that does is it gives me a flat frequency response, which is pretty much what I'm after. Now, I'm able to tilt, like the software allows me to tilt. A lot of the other software allows you to do the same kind of thing. Like it gives you a tilt, or it gives you a different, there's a different curve where it boosts the low end, because we're not used to listening to, completely flat. You actually have to get used to listening to that. And that was actually one of the things that one of the engineers taught me early on when I first started. He said, if you have any EQ, like if you do the smiley face EQ in your car stereo or in whatever you're listening to, turn that off. Start getting used to listening to music flat, because you want to listen to music without any artificial boosting or attenuation, so that you can make better mixes. And it took a little while. It took a little while to get used to that. But I mean, I've been doing that for a long time, and yes, definitely, my mixes are better for it, and the work that I do is better for it. So this basically just allows me to have a flat frequency response. That's what this software does. Now, if you can buy one of the headphones that are within that, you will save yourself some money, because this piece of software wasn't cheap. I can't remember how much it was. It was a long time ago I bought it, but I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of like maybe $350 Canadian or something like that. Anyway, yeah. So that is pretty much my monitor chain of plugins, what I use, and also how I use them. And like I said, having those plugins and using them in that way and with that understanding should definitely save you a lot of time, and also a lot of frustration, because I get, that whole process of like figuring out like, how do I tune my room? Should I put foam here or there or whatever? That takes a long time. Best thing to do, get rid of that part of the equation right off the bat and get down to the important stuff, which is learning audio and learning how to create great mixes, how to turn out good mixes. So just by having that and just by using this in the way that I was showing you, it's going to save you a lot of time and hopefully also save you a lot of money. Now, if you want to learn more about audio, I am happy to teach you. And if you look down below, you'll see a sign up for a waiting list as I'm creating this. And yeah, I look forward to teaching you some more. I look forward to helping you get started on your recording and mixing journey. And in the next video that I'll be putting up here is I'll be showing you signal flow. I'll be going into signal flow and also somewhat into, what DAW you should be choosing. Yeah, basically how to really get started with your mix, going into signal flow, and maybe going into a little bit of volume balancing. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next video. And don't forget to sign up to the waiting list down below. All right, cheers.